You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the Packers Post and Cheesehead TV. Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, we are cruising toward the start of the regular season, one preseason game in the books. But before we break that down, how about a message from our sponsor?
And Gil, I know you're all choked up like I am when it comes to our sponsor. Before we get started, a few words about Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. If you're watching with us on YouTube, following us on Facebook, wherever you may be, you can see the link right there on your screen. That's theticketking.com. And, of course, you can watch every episode of No Huddle Radio at your favorite episodes on the Packers Talk Network on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it, Gil. I'll put it that way. You won't regret it. Sign up. Get all the endless Packer content that you crave every day like we do.
Yeah, and then, of course, you could also, if you join us live for the live stream on YouTube, you can also make comments and interact with Sean and myself. And we always look forward to hearing from our viewers and our listeners. So please do that because it's always great to talk a little Packers football with all of you. One preseason game in the books, a solid 23-10 win over the Cleveland Browns. And Jordan Love wasn't in the game for long, but boy, did he make an impression.
Gil, he didn't need to be in the game for long. 2 for 2, and he had a 65-yard touchdown bomb to Dontavian Wicks, where that deep ball, where the deep ball accuracy was a bit of an issue last year in his first year as a starter, still threw more than 30 touchdown passes in his first year as the full-time starter. That deep ball was perfect. I don't care if it's preseason action. It was right in stride, right in the breadbasket, if you want to be really cliche and everything. Dontavian Wicks, all he had to do was catch and run. And it was as perfect as it got. And the Packers and a lot of people have been raving about Jordan Love's deep ball, how improved it looks. And one throw, that's all we need to see from him. One truly deep throw, all we need to see from him in that preseason opener. And it looked like he's improved that part of his game for sure.
Yeah, it was great to see, and it just adds to the confidence of the offense and the confidence that the team has in Jordan Love. And, to me, it is great to see a guy who just signed this huge contract, and yet he spent the entire offseason working on some of the things that he felt he needed to improve on, and obviously that the coaches felt he needed to improve on. And that was great to see that, he comes out, first game action of the preseason, and just a dime right to Dontavian Wicks, 6 points. And really at that point, even though we didn't know it at the time, game over, I mean, that was it.
Yeah, and I just read an article this past week. I believe Tyler Dunn wrote it for Go Long. I believe it's the Go Long website that he has. And he interviewed his longtime quarterback coach, a guy he's been training with since I believe he was a teenager, Steve Calhoun. And Steve Calhoun's pretty hard to impress, it sounds like. And essentially, he just said this guy's gotten better. He's honest with how much work he puts in, and just the sky's truly the limit for Jordan Love. And yeah, that part of his game got better. It's going to be really dangerous for opposing teams. I'm just glad he's on our team. I'm glad he's signed long-term with the Green Bay Packers. But beyond Jordan Love, though, Gil, obviously we only saw him in there for 3 snaps. That's all we needed to see. Wrap him up in bubble wrap and send him down to Brazil for all I care at this point. But how about Grant Dubose, though? A guy who spent his rookie year on the practice squad, didn't really participate in training camp last year, dealing with injuries. We didn't really see him in the preseason. But, man, what an impression he made in that preseason opener, and he's been really good in camp as well. He made the discussions a lot harder when it comes to August 27th, when they got to get that roster down to 53 players, because Grant Dubose made himself a case to make not only maybe this roster, but maybe another roster coming up soon.
Yeah, I mean, 5 catches on 6 targets, 66 yards. He's been catching everything in training camp also. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like this was just a one-shot deal. And, you sort of wonder if he wasn't injured last year in training camp, would he have still made, would he have had a chance to make the team? Would the history be a little bit different? But, he's going to make it tough for Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur to let him go come August 27th. And, the more he balls out, the tougher it gets to stash him on the practice squad if they want to go that route also.
Yeah, and with Grant DuBose, he had such a good game. Bo Melton had a pretty rough game, though. And Bo Melton was such a great story last year. You think that he's a lock to make the roster this year, but I don't know. Outside those top four receivers, we'll call them the Fantastic Four with, Wicks and Reed and Watson and Dobbs. Really, it's like I could see the Packers keeping 6 receivers and maybe 2 spots are available in that group. It's going to be really hard pickings. But outside of that, Gil, I thought Emmanuel Wilson, I thought he ran pretty well in the limited time we saw him. Tight end Joel Wilson, he's making a case for the initial 53, some tight end depth. Looks like he's a guy who could definitely make this roster or could be on another NFL roster if the Packers don't hold on to him at the end of the month. A.J. Dillon struggled a little bit. And it wasn't all his fault. There weren't really a lot of openings, but multiple short yardage runs. He couldn't get 1 yard multiple times. I know it's early. I know it was a little different circumstances comparing him to Emmanuel Wilson, but right now it's like if it comes down to Emmanuel Wilson or A.J. Dillon for a roster spot come the end of the month, A.J. Dillon I'd be a little bit nervous about right now.
Yeah, I mean, he here's the thing, you have A.J. Dillon on the roster because he's a different style of runner than Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson and Marshawn Lloyd. And, he had 3 cracks to pick up, I think it was 2 yards. They had 2nd and 2, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Didn't get the first down on any of them. And you're right, the blocking wasn't great. But if you heard Matt LaFleur at the press conference early this week, you got to get your pad level down. You've got to be able to, you're 6 feet tall. You fall forward, you've got 2 yards.
Yeah.
He's got to be able to pick that up. He didn't run the ball like a short yardage running situation. And here's a guy in his 5th NFL season. He should know at this point in his career, this is a short yardage situation. I go hit the hole. I get my pads low and I move forward. I find that little crease and I go forward. And the fact that he didn't do it on 3 straight plays, and that was really his only action of the game, that was very discouraging. And hopefully A.J. Dillon bounces back because he is so popular among fans, among his teammates. It's hard not to root for him, but it's hard to say that he did a good job on Saturday for sure.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say goodbye to the mayor of Door County, but yeah, it's like the short yard situations are just kind of poor. Where he did say he talked to a media member, I believe it was Cody Krupp up in the Green Bay area. He did talk to him in the locker room after training camp earlier this week and said, I grade out at a 98% the plays I was in. So it could have been a situation where Cleveland, it seemed like Cleveland was really loading the box on all those situations. And it's just, there are just too many guys for the offensive line to block. There really was such little running room. Obviously you got to give him another couple more preseason games to see, to kind of turn the tide and show some improvement. But it's more so, I don't want to more so knock A.J. Dillon. It's more so Emmanuel Wilson, how well he has looked. And the limited time he played last year, I thought he looked pretty good in actually regular season action. Obviously, he was great last preseason. That preseason game in Cincinnati essentially sealed his spot on the 53 because they figured he would not make it through waivers if he were released by the Packers. I feel like he's in a similar boat right now where Emmanuel Wilson can't not make this team. He's got to be on this initial 53-man roster. Outside of that, though, I think A.J. Dillon, his cause is definitely going to be assisted, though, by some unfortunate news with Marshawn Lloyd with pulling his hamstring. Clearly something was wrong after he caught a short pass from Sean Clifford at the end of the first half. He pulled up. You could tell right away. It's like, oh, that's got to be a hamstring or a quad or a groin, something like that. You got to think that he may end up on the IR to open up the season, and the Packers are going to need 3 running backs. So A.J. Dillon, his job security may actually be pretty good, but obviously not ideal with the Marshawn Lloyd situation.
No, and it's unfortunate for Lloyd. And the question becomes, do you stash him on IR before cut down or after cut down? Because that affects the way you can activate. him and how many players you could activate. And then, who do you try to put on the practice squad and then bring him back? And, there's all those politics and all those logistical things that have to be worked out. But to me, Emmanuel Wilson, it would be very hard to keep him off this roster right now. And I really, he led the NFL in preseason rushing yards last year. Seems to have picked up right where he left off this year. I was very pleased with the way he played.
Yeah, and you got to think that he's going to be playing a little more in the second preseason game. But before that second preseason game, the Packers, they're going to have a joint practice in the Mile High City with the Denver Broncos. And it sounds like Jordan Love, he's not going to play in that second preseason game, but he's going to get quite a bit of work in against the Broncos on Friday in practice, which is way more valuable to me, where it's like, hey, he's wearing the red jersey, not going to get touched. Don't hit the guy who just got the highest, who became the highest paid quarterback in NFL history just a few weeks ago. So I'm okay with that. He's going to get some honest work in. But Gil, besides that, though, where, obviously it's going to be good to get competition against another team, get to go against someone else besides your own teammates. What needs to be accomplished at joint practice with the Broncos if you're looking at through the Packers lenses?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. Number one, the run blocking, as we alluded to from the Browns game, it's got to be better. And I think that was something that the Packers struggled with last year. And, to me, it's almost like A.J. Dillon is sort of the measuring stick for the run blocking because he gets what's there. He doesn't always get anything more or anything less. So, if Dillon is struggling, that's usually an indication that the holes are not there. And I think the run blocking has to be a little bit better this week. Obviously, I think we're going to be keeping an eye on the backup quarterback battle. I think that's going to be important, and I think it'll be important Friday and Sunday. But right now, Michael Pratt's making a little noise, and Sean Clifford has got to be on his game. You wonder if they keep two quarterbacks or three, and if they're keeping two, who do you try to put on the practice squad?
Yeah, and Sean Clifford, he had a rough start to training camp, to practice, but he seems to rise to another level when it comes to game action, where it just seems like he's one of those guys where it's like in practice, it's sloppy, but you get him in game action, you get him in live game mode, and he switch flips, and he just rises to a different level. But that's something that I was going to mention later in this episode, where that's definitely something I'm going to be looking forward to, where how do they divvy up the snaps between Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt? Is Sean Clifford going to take the first series, Michael Pratt going to take the second series, and so on and so forth? Sean Clifford going to be the first half, Michael Pratt the second half. It's going to be very interesting because Michael Pratt showed some good things in that preseason opener, and he has showed some good things in camp, and Sean Clifford's job as the backup quarterback is definitely not set in stone. The big thing, though, that I want accomplished at joint practice, though, with the Broncos, if I'm the Packers, or not accomplished, don't get injured. Have a clean bill of health. Don't get in any fights. Those are the two big things. We obviously heard, if you're following training camps from around the league, the Giants and the Lions had some joint practices earlier this year, and they got in so many scuffles. The league fined both teams, and those are situations where, hey, a scuffle can be kind of good. Get that negative energy out, get those frustrations out. Just when if a guy though throws a punch, though, that's a broken hand, and you're going to be out for weeks and weeks. And you could get a lot of serious injuries. You could get suspended as well. Just keep your cool. Get some honest work in. Offensively, Jordan Love, hopefully, and the first team offense could get as much work in as possible on Friday against Denver's number one defense without having the quarterback get hit. And then also coming up, though, as well, get that defense more set in stone. Seeing a different offense will be really good for Jeff Hafley and the new Packers defensive scheme.
Yeah, and, the Browns kept their starting quarterback out of the week one game, at least at the joint practice. You expect that the Packers defense will go up against the number one Broncos offense, and that's a little bit more of a measuring stick if you think about it. So hopefully we do get a little bit more of that and a chance for Jordan Love to show what he can do against the top defense without the major risk of injury. And then, to me, you're just looking at a lot of those position battles.
Oh, yeah. And those position battles are going to be – it's going to be very critical in that joint practice. It's only 1 day of practice at the Broncos, which is pretty smart because I think if it spills over to 2 days, that's where the tempers start to flare a little bit. So I think one practice, one game, that's more than enough. But segueing into that game, again, the Packers and Broncos have the joint practice on Friday, August 16th. They'll have their second preseason games, respectively, on Sunday, August 18th. And there's still plenty of things to watch for, Gil. We mentioned the quarterback battle between Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt. I hope they alternate series. I think that'd be the best course of action. Matt LaFleur said Adam Stenavich and Jason Vrabel were calling plays quite a bit in that preseason opener. Let those guys call plays again in game 2. See what they can do with the backup quarterback spot and get some valuable experience. What is it that fans should be watching for, though, in this second preseason game coming up in the Mile High City?
Well, one of the things that I'll be looking at is the safety play. And it's not just the players themselves, but where are these guys lining up and how much are they playing? I mean, so far, Javon Bullard and Evan Williams have both really looked good in training camp and in the preseason. I mean, Williams led the team with 6 tackles, forced a fumble. He looked really good in the first preseason game. There have been sort of some conversations saying maybe Bullard moves over to the slot instead of Keyshawn Nixon. Williams, if he's ready to start, is starting opposite Xavier McKinney. I want to see at least that being tried during this preseason game at some point, and then to see how it goes. But, you know, that slot and the safety spot opposite McKinney, that job, those 2 jobs are really up in the air, and I would like to see, you know, how those players fighting for that job end up performing.
And don't forget also Anthony Johnson Jr., who played pretty well in that second game, that first preseason game as well, where there was a play where he set the edge beautifully at the line of scrimmage, helped back up the Cleveland Browns on a run play, really stop that play from happening. I also, speaking of setting the edge on defense, though, I was kind of disappointed with how little it seemed like the Packers were able to set the edge in that preseason opener. That's something that's got to improve. And I bet Jeff Hafley, he's not a dumb guy. There's a reason why he was a Division I head football coach. There's a reason why he was a high-level Division I defensive coordinator. There's a reason why he's been an assistant in the NFL. There's a reason why he's the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers right now, because he's a smart guy, and he probably sees that where those defensive ends, their eyes kind of sucked inside a little bit. They weren't really holding contained very well in that first preseason game. I want to see improvement there for sure. But that safety battle is just Evan Williams. I've been wanting a safety who can make a play in the open field, who can make a tackle in the open field by himself. I think Evan Williams is that guy. And I think Javon Bullard is that guy too. You just hope it can transfer over from the preseason to the regular season, because there's something special there. Evan Williams is really good, and he just seems to have a knack for finding the football too. And that's what you need in a safety, right? It's just so impressed in that first game by both those guys.
It's been a while since the Packers have had some really good safety play. I mean, to me, I think the last time they had it was, you go back to the second half of 2020, and that's like 7 or 8 games where, you know, Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage were really playing really well, but they never really were able to keep that level going. So, yeah, it would be great to see some improved safety play. And look, the entire safety position has been revamped. None of the top 3 guys from last year are back. You're counting on some rookies and maybe some second-year guys. Having those guys play well and take that next baby step forward, I think, will be very important. Another guy that I'll be watching carefully in the second preseason game, assuming he plays, is Jordan Morgan. I want to see you know, how he handles that right guard spot. I think he's the favorite to win the position, but he really does have to, you know, show that he's ready to do it. I still don't really trust Sean Ryan as a pass protector. I think he's solid as a run blocker, but the pass protection has been inconsistent. Jordan Morgan, this is his job to lose. He's got to win it.
And Brett Rogers chiming in on YouTube right now, where he says, I feel like the kickoff unit, he says the KO unit could be top 10 easy. Okay, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Special teams, new elements to the kickoff game and the kick return game as well. But with that offense, I want to see Jordan Morgan play. He did return to practice this week, fortunately. Hopefully he can get some live action in this second preseason game. I've been really craving to see him play in live game action. He's our first-round pick. I want to see what made him our first-round pick. He looked pretty good in the family night scrimmage as well, but I want to see him against other competition. Offensively, obviously, we're not going to see Jordan Love most likely on Sunday in front of the cameras. defensively, I do want to see the starters out there for most of the game, except for a few guys I only want to see for a few series. Xavier McKinney doesn't need to be out there for more than 2 series. Jair, Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, those guys don't need to be out there for more than 2 series, in my opinion. On Sunday. Preston Smith as well. Yeah, those are the main guys where it's like, yep, 2 series, get them out of there. Get more work for guys like Lucas Van Ness and Devontae White, who both looked like their games have improved significantly since last year. They look like they're going to make a jump this year. I want to see them play a little more. I want to see Quay Walker play a little more. Hopefully, Tyron Hopper, who returned from injury this past week at practice as well, maybe we can see him. We're not going to see Edrin Cooper yet, I don't think. Maybe we'll see Carrington Valentine. Eric Stokes, kind of in the middle where it's like I'd like to see him maybe play a quarter, but not too much. Don't want to see him play a whole lot. But yeah, keep rotating those safeties, man. The safety battle is awesome. Additionally, though, on top of that, we obviously are going to pay close attention as well to Anders Carlson and Greg Joseph, where both kickers were perfect on Saturday in that preseason opener in Cleveland. But Greg Joseph's kicks looked a lot cleaner than Anders Carlson's kicks did. I just get nervous watching Anders Carlson play, and every time he lines up, I'm just so worried that he's going to miss wide right or wide left because he's way too damn close to those pipes, Gil, and it scares the crap out of me.
Does anybody want to be the kicker of this team? Because it just seems like both guys are struggling with their consistency. Joseph has a slightly higher success rate in practice right now than Carlson, but neither one of them are looking terrific. It wouldn't surprise me if the waiver wire after cut down, they bring in another kicker, whether they stash him on the practice squad or use him to, battle with the guy who survives this battle now. We'll see. But I just right now, I'm not confident in Anders Carlson. I know, Matt LaFleur allegedly said he was joking last year when he was asked about Carlson. And he said, yeah, I pray every time he takes a kick. Yeah. But I think there was something behind that humor. And maybe he was trying to cover his rear end a little bit by saying he was joking when he said that.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's really tough. And you could just tell there's some pressure there with everything. But it's going to be a hard decision. But hopefully we'll see Anders Carlson nail some kicks through the uprights with ease. Hopefully it'll be a lot smoother operation. The Packers they're down to one long snapper again. Peter Bowden is gone. Matt Orzech is still the long snapper for the Packers. Hey, he's a Super Bowl winning long snapper. So I can understand the thinking kind of right there for right now. But yeah, that kicking competition still. It's like you got to hold your breath here and there. But preseason, this is time to get the kinks out and figure out who your guy is going to be. So yeah, I would say obviously if we're going top 3, it's the backup quarterback battle, it's the safety battle, and it's the kicking battle for me. That could be really intriguing. With honorable mention being who's going to be the backup offensive tackles to Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom as well.
Yeah, and I would give another honorable mention just to the receiver battle because.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, we still don't know. We know who the top 4 guys on the depth chart are, but we don't have an order for them necessarily. And then the last 2 spots, I think. Realistically, it's Malik Heath, Bo Melton, and Grant Dubose going for 2 spots. Who's going to get it? You got to go out there and prove yourself, and it'll be interesting to see, who takes another step forward and who struggles a little bit.
And we got to also account for Samori Toure too. He's been on the team for 2 years, and I think the Packers they'll consider him as well. But the big thing is though in the NFL, you got to be available. You got to be ready to go. Packer injury report. Obviously, we mentioned running back Marshawn Lloyd, who pulled his hamstring in that preseason opening win in Cleveland. He hasn't practiced all week. Matt LaFleur didn't put a timetable for when he would be back. Doesn't sound with a hamstring. You got to be careful. Obviously, we know with Christian Watson, we know with so many guys in the past, you got to make sure that you're 100% good to go, or else you're just going to be back to the square one. Linebacker Edrin Cooper, he's still out with a hip injury. Also this week, rookie running back Jarvion Howard, defensive end Keyshawn Banks, both dealing with their own injuries that kept them out of practice this week. Good news, though, cornerback Carrington Valentine returned, as well as linebacker Tyron Hopper, offensive lineman Jordan Morgan, as we mentioned, and undrafted rookie free agent offensive lineman Donovan Jennings all returned to practice this week. And with that injury report, Gil, too, I'll say this, where this is a very important week for Donovan Jennings, a guy who was the big bonus baby of that undrafted rookie free agent class. He's got to get out there and play, though, and you got to see what you have there, because I think the Packers probably think that Donovan Jennings is the guy who's going to keep that streak going of undrafted rookie free agents who make the initial 53-man roster.
2005. It's been a long time. The streak is in jeopardy this year. It really may be in jeopardy. We'll see what happens. But, right now, Jennings has a lot to prove and less time to prove it.
Yeah, and so he's just got to get out there. He's got to play. And there's, like we were saying before, where you got to think it's Rasheed Walker, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, Jordan Morgan, Sean Ryan, and then Zach Tom. You probably put Jacob Monk in there as a lock as well, just being a fifth-round pick. And he had some good he had some good reps in that preseason opener too. But outside of that, you're looking at maybe 2 openings outside of that, possibly. And there's a lot of guys competing for those spots, but you got to play. You got to get out there. We got to see what you got.
Yeah. And, again, to me, the run blocking just has been lacking a little bit. I want to see a little more push. Again, I wasn't happy with the way A.J. Dillon ran, but at the same time, before he got to the line of scrimmage, he was being hit on all of those plays.
Yeah, and it's just obviously it's going to be a big point of emphasis. Get him to run behind Sean Ryan, because Sean Ryan's a damn good run blocker. Let's see what he can do behind that big guy, number 75, when he's in there at right guard or possibly center as well, vying for that center job. Sneaky candidate to be the center this year on opening day in Brazil. Gil, obviously, we got some trivia coming up. We're going to wrap up pretty shortly, but what articles do you have coming up online for the Packers Post and Cheesehead TV?
Well, for the Packers Post on Friday, I will have my initial 53-man roster predictions. So I'm breaking that down. And for Cheesehead, I posted an article about Evan Williams and the way he's looked, what he's accomplished so far, but what he still needs to accomplish to possibly win a starting job as a rookie.
Less than 2 weeks away from roster cutdown day. Kind of crazy for that initial 53-man roster. I'll reveal my initial 53 coming up when we're live next week here on YouTube and Facebook. And thanks to those watching and following along. Really appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your grandparents, tell your enemies, tell everybody about us. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. But Gil, you ready for some trivia real quick before we wrap up?
Let's do it. All
right. Well, the Packers made a few roster moves this past week, as just previously aforementioned, undrafted rookie free agent long snapper Peter Bowden and veteran safety Tyler Coyle were both released. Bowden for the second time in less than a month. And to fill that void, the Packers signed linebacker Chris Russell and running back Nate McCrary. Now, if McCrary's name sounds familiar, you are thinking straight. You are not crazy. McCrary was officially a Green Bay Packer for just over 20 days in August of last year, from August 7th until he was released on the 29th later that month, before the Cleveland Browns signed him to their practice squad for 6 days in October of the 2023 season. Now, following last season, McCrary played for the UFL's Michigan Panthers. Panthers' leading passer and primary starting quarterback was also a former Packer. Gil, which former Packer started at quarterback for the Michigan Panthers in 2024?
Oh, wow.
He's very recent. He is very recent. I'll give you that.
Okay. And did this player ever actually play a regular season game for the Packers?
He did not.
Okay.
So he was a pseudo member of the Packers, but he was you could say he was a Packer though. I'll give you a hint. Speedy guy. And if anyone watching, if you want to chime in, if you know who it is, don't look up on your phones. Don't look up online or anything. Don't cheat. Gil's not cheating. You're not cheating either. But if you want to chime in, have at it.
Let's go with Alex Magoo.
It is not Alex Magoo. Very good guess, because Alex Magoo was a UFL stud. Is actually quarterback Danny Etling. Remember, Etling had that big run in that preseason game. I believe it was last year or 2 years ago. But Etling led the Panthers of the UFL with 786 passing yards, 3 touchdowns this past season. Etling was on the Packers practice squad for a short stint during the 2021 season, and for the entire 2022 season. He was in camp last year for a little bit, didn't make the practice squad or the 53-man roster in 2023 at all. But that's your answer right there, Danny Etling. So Gil, we learned something today. We all learned a little more today, and that's Danny Etling is a UFL stud quarterback.
There you go. And but could not make the active roster for the Packers. So we'll see.
Hey, that's hard, man. I couldn't make the active roster for the Packers either. So I don't blame Danny Etling at all.
Not at all. Not at all. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at Bill Packers and at GB Packers Sean to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackersean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. Thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.